Okay, and going to more sectoral views that have been really suffering over the year to date for reasons that we all know about, namely travel and hospitality and commercial real estate.
So the first one, I guess we do have a view because we own Booking.com, right? The way I think about it is that if you had a spectrum in terms of risk in kind of the travel and hospitality industry, on one end, you would have airlines, especially the big legacy ones, where you have massive operational leverage and massive financial leverage. And on the other end of that spectrum, you have something like Booking.com, which has a relatively a flexible cost structure in the short term, and a very flexible variable cost structure in the medium term. And we've seen that kind of this year, their ability to take out cost in a matter of a couple of months has been unbelievable. And they've got the balance sheet in terms of cash to secure that. And depending on how strongly you believe the recovery will be and how long it will take, you should bet on at one point in that spectrum. So for example, hotels like Marriott and Hilton or whatever, they're going to be somewhere in the middle. The ones that own more of their properties, they're going to be closer to the airlines that are ones that depend more on franchising, are going to be closer to Booking. When we looked at Booking in March and early April, we decided that we had no idea how quickly travel is going to recover. And we looked at multiple kind of versions of the world, including ones where travel doesn't recover for many, many, many years in the absence of, it was kind of the worst case scenario where you have no vaccine, no treatment, and a fundamental change in behavior driven both by psychology and economics that really makes recovering back to 2019 levels many, many, many years down the road. And we looked at everything in between. And with airlines, if things don't recover within a year or two, it's very hard to see how, as an equity owner, you don't get massively diluted, either through issuance of more equity or through the issuance of a lot more debt that has to be paid back out of future free cash flows. And in either way, kind of that clock ticking makes the investment worse and worse as time goes by, to a much greater degree than something like a Booking.com. And so we played it conservatively and chose to go to the other extreme. Granted, Booking was trading at much lower levels than it is now, so it may not necessarily be the best place to be on that spectrum, but I think the going to airlines, for example, was definitely in the too hard bucket, and a much higher risk investment that we were willing to underwrite. On the commercial real estate, and then I'll hand it over to you, Aubrey, if you want to comment on this. I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you we just renegotiated our office lease this week, actually, and got a much, much lower lease than we had. Our building here is probably 30% empty, I want to say. And just talking to people, the few people that have been around back at the office, I would not be surprised. I mean, every other day, there's a truck outside and a company leaving. I would not be surprised that it's half empty within a few months. So at least in the short term, it's going to be really tricky for commercial property owners. Will there be a mass exodus from offices? I personally don't think so. And I think once the acute COVID situation is resolved within a year or two or whatever, I think people will be surprised by how much we go back to the way things are. If you want to look at how different companies have been dealing with this, go and search Twitter versus Amazon. So Amazon has been massively investing the past couple of months into new office space. And they think that they're going to bring everyone back to the office as soon as this thing is over. And they believe that it doesn't work as well from home. And then Twitter basically told people you can all work from home indefinitely. Facebook has done something similar, though not to that extreme. It's very hard to tell where it falls, but I'm not in the camp that everyone is going to start working from home and nobody's going to want to go to the office ever again. I think people will go back. Companies will have to probably be more flexible about working from home under different days of the week and different conditions or whatever. Now that the technology, they've invested in the infrastructure to make it possible anyway. So that allows them to do it. And it's proven that to a great degree it does work. I don't think it works long-term, but I think in a short-term capacity, mixed with some office FaceTime it probably works. But I don't know where it falls exactly. And again, this is an industry that's both operationally and financially levered. And so even a small change can have a massive impact on the outcome. Aubrey?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much similar sort of thinking. I guess the only thing I can add really, in terms of the commercial real estate is that it just seems to me that the risk reward is very skewed to the downsides, because certainly operationally, because you can't get above 100% capacity. I really struggle to see any price increases happening in this environment. But as you say, there is huge pressure to the downside, and for how long we don't know. So I think there are just better opportunities elsewhere. Why cap your gains with unlimited losses, and they are pretty much unlimited with you can lose everything when you're levered as highly as some of these things are. When you could own something like Unilever. And then travel, I think really that it's just going to depend on how long it takes for this thing to finish, to be over. If Russia has a vaccine, and
I'm sure they do.
Yes. Sorry, let me rephrase that. If Putin actually has a working vaccine, then it could be over very quickly. And in which case we go back to our normal lives. But if it takes 2 years, then the changes that happen become more permanent. So people are buying a lot of RVs, recreational vehicles. A friend of mine in America just said he saw driving down, I think the I-10, and he saw every fifth car was an RV. And if that's the case, then that is going to have a big impact, because when people make capital expenditures, when buildings are built with this in mind, the changes there are very long lasting. So it really will depend. But from what we do, we buy things like Booking, where it's not, where they can win in any environment.
I think I want to add one more thing on the travel bit, which I forgot to mention, which is certain parts of the travel industry are much more exposed to a much greater degree than you'd think to business travel. Big legacy airlines, for example, and certain types of hotels and hotel chains. And I can see a much bigger impact on an ongoing basis on business travel than I do on leisure. So if I'm thinking many years out, I'm willing to accept I'm not going to say predict, but at least accept that business travel will fundamentally be reduced for a very long period, structurally be reduced on an ongoing basis compared to leisure. I think the case for flying halfway around the world to attend a board meeting is much weaker than taking a holiday by the beach. And I think people have just gotten used to using Zoom and things like that, which again, I'm not saying it's going to completely replace business travel, but I can easily see how it reduces it by 20, 30%, maybe even more. And I think that hits certain parts of the travel industry more than others.